All right, long time no see. It's been quite a while since I've done a video on YouTube, and I just wanted to share a little bit about some of the things that happened this year. Already in 2025, I went on an expedition in Svalbard, if you can call it an expedition. More appropriately would be a training. For those of you who don't know, Svalbard is in the Arctic. It's commonly called Spitsbergen because some part of the Svalbard is called Spitsbergen, and it used to be shared between the Norwegians and the Soviets. And it's not fully Norwegian, but basically it's administrated by the Norwegians. And it was a fantastic experience. Um, the goal that we had was to actually have a training to prepare for a mission to Antarctica, basically about 45 to 2 months that we would spend in Antarctica. And as you might expect, that you do need quite a lot of training to survive very cold conditions, the isolation, and some of the loads that you might actually need to do. Some people were like, "Oh, are you going to be taking dogs with you and have dog sleds?" It's like, "No, I'm the dog. I'm the one pulling the equipment." Obviously, not as much barking, but still quite a bit. So the training was basically to, test the equipment, test the people, develop skills. I'm quite lucky. I'm Swiss, so I'm used to the cold. It's not as bad as, for example, Canada or that kind of thing. But when you do go skiing or in winter, it does get quite cold here. So compared to other people, I had already a bit of training. And during the first analog missions that I did, I was trained with French explorer Alban Michon. And with Alban Michon, what we did was extreme environment training. So we had to sleep in the tents in the snow, in a snowstorm. We had to do ice diving, which is really diving under a frozen lake, and survive in the snow, had to extract some water. Then I did his explorer school for 3 days, again with some ice diving, and we had a really incredible training, which was you try to build a tent in a simulated snowstorm, which is you are given mittens, and I was given a gas mask and headphones so I couldn't hear anything. And my friend, she was given Inuit glasses, which is basically just a tiny, tiny hole in the glasses, horizontal holes, also headphones and mittens. And Alban was blowing snow in our faces to really try and prevent us from building the tent quickly. And you build it until you can do it in just under 5 minutes. And it was funny because I remember that training, I was laughing so hard. And I was thinking, well, it's great training because if I'm ever on the North Pole, the South Pole, in the middle of a snowstorm, then I know how to build specifically this tent really, really quickly and how to stay patient. So, with that in mind, I went to Spitsbergen, to Svalbard, and we were 12 people, two guides, and the rest of the team. And some people I had never ever met in my life, some others I had met online only, and two of them I had worked before, and they were real dear friends of mine. So, obviously, you never know how people will react, how people will work. Little remnant from Svalbard. Kidding. So you never know what it's gonna be. What was great is that the first days, we got 2 days of full training. It was minus 35, I think, degrees when we did the two first days of training. But we were indoors and we were learning how to build a tent, how to work on our sleeping bags. All our equipment was verified by the guides. So we were given an Excel file with all of this. So if you were to do an expedition in Antarctica or the Arctic, it's very unlikely that you would go there without guides and without people who would actually check your equipment. So they will look into things to see, do you have the right boots? Do you have indoor boots? Do you have the right ski boots? The gloves, do you have liner gloves? Do you have liner mittens? Do you have mittens? Do you have working gloves? Do you have other sorts of gloves, for instance? Same with the socks, yada, yada, yada. Even the underwear, it's good that you check, make sure that you don't get blisters, and you don't need too many underwear. Some people only wear one set for 58 days, but you do what you want. So you get all your material checked. And those first 2 days were already quite rough because it's really, really cold and you're not moving that much. You're just doing training and you're like, okay, well, we're not yet on expedition. We're still in the city. And soon we're gonna be out there. And what was fantastic is Svalbard is such a beautiful place. Already when you arrive there with the plane and you just see this island of snow, it was in March, so it was still completely snowed in. And you land there and it's wow, I felt like I was in a fantastic book, you know. It was absolutely lovely. And people were delightful. Most of the hotels they looked like they were out from an Instagram advertisements, nothing not real. Really, really lovely. They even had a coffee bar with huskies. You can just pet huskies. So it was already quite a change of pace. And then we were off. So we took this sort of kind of a truck, sort of. And we were driving for like an hour and a half, something like this, and we're shaking everywhere. We were wearing all the layers of clothes we could because obviously there was no heating, but we were also not moving. So I was trying to fall asleep while getting shaken like this. It was quite interesting. And then we got left off in the middle of nowhere. What's interesting is that you don't have huge mountains. It's not like when I'm in Switzerland, I go skiing, you have those huge mountains, you have the valley. You're in a valley, but the mountains, they're not really big. You have a huge amount of land that's just flat. And then you have some hills, but the top of them is actually quite flat. So you feel like you've never been in a place like this before. And it's so beautiful and white. And you put your skis, you put your harness, you tie yourself to your sledge, to what we call polka in Finnish, and you start walking. You just start walking. And the first day went well, was quite amazing, beautiful, etc. We set up the tent because it's in Svalbard. You have to have a turnus for polar bear watch. It's actually mandatory to have your weapon with you. So you need to have people who accompany you, do have weapons, and they are trained to scare the polar bears because it's a big risk and they don't want to have anyone dying. And you have to have a polar bear watch. That's actually mandatory. So the way it works is that you will, depending on how many people you're on the team, you will split your polar bear watch into chunks of 1 hour, 45 minutes, 2 hours, 3 hours. We were 12, so we were able to do 1 hour shifts, sort of, which was good. It's not too long. It's long enough that you get really cold, but it's not too long. So we were really, really lucky to be such a big group, and we were able to do those shifts. And we would turn. So some of us would do it at 1 a.m., then the next day you do it at 5 a.m., the next day you do it at 9 p.m., depending on when the sun's out or not. And my first night, I had to do the 4 a.m. shift, and it was minus 36 degrees. And I was a bit tired. I had just come out from being sick for a week before coming to Svalbard, which is not great timing, but when you plan for a year to have an expedition, it's difficult to say, oh, go or not go. And I got really ill. My hair froze completely. But I thought, oh, it's fine. I'm just gonna get some food in the tent. It's gonna be okay. And the partner I was sharing the tent with, Michelle, and I were a bit too efficient, and we got the tent packed much quicker, and we waited for the others for a couple of hours. So basically, I was up since 4 a.m. and we left camp around I think 10:30, which meant that for 5 hours and a half I actually was already cold. And during the day, it just got progressively worse. I started having hallucinations. I had nausea, so I couldn't eat anything. And you have to understand when there's those such temperatures, and you have to pull between 35 and 50 kilos on the snow, you're using 4,000, 5,000 calories easy a day. And the food rations that we had were about 3,000 calories. Now, if you're not hungry, you're not getting those 3,000 calories in. So you're already in deficit, but it gets worse because you're not eating them. So that first day, I started worrying. I was like, what the hell am I doing there? I have no strength. And I'm not usually a very, very strong person. Yeah, no, I'm kidding. But I usually have no problem with strength. And in this case, I couldn't pull it correctly. I felt like I was standing still on the same spot and my skis were just sliding and I was standing still. Actually, I was moving forwards, but I was wearing all the layers I could, and yet I was still cold. And it was really funny because during the whole trip, you feel like a kid. because you are reduced to your basic needs in the sense that you are always have to tell the guide, I'm cold, I'm warm, I'm sweating, I'm hungry, I need to go to the loo, I'm tired. And these things where in normal life you can deal with. It's fine if you cold and in Switzerland or in France or whatever, you put the bloody jacket on and you're gonna be fine. It's very unlikely that you're going to get really sick. The consequences are not huge. If you're hungry, normally you can wait a couple of hours and then you will have dinner when everybody's having dinner. But when you're in such situations where your body is put to extremes, you really have to listen to this. And it also affects the whole team. Because, for example, if you're too warm, you're going to start sweating and this is going to freeze. And when you start to freeze, you get really cold. And if you get really cold, you're going to have less blood flow to, for example, your fingers or your toes, and you're going to lose a limb on the long run. So it's really, really not a joke. So that first day, second day sort of, I was really, really unwell. And I was wearing all my layers and I was still cold, and they were checking if I was sweating, if I had fever. And in the end, the last 200 meters, some people took my pool car and helped like pulling it to the base camp. So we were really, really lucky that I had this team. And we didn't know each other that well. But the fact that these people were coming together to help me and not leave me behind, I was already thinking they're gonna have to evacuate me. I'm dead weight. I'm unable to progress as quickly as wanted. But they showed up that they would be there for me. And that night, my polar bear watch was supposed to be at 1 a.m. And Shahar, who was sharing the tent with me, he took my shift. Luckily, because the whole night I was shaking, I was extremely cold. At that moment I was having fever and I was completely drenched. So everybody was really worried. But having a good night of sleep, having a bit of time go forwards, it really, really helped. And the next day I was not fully myself yet, but I could already feel a difference. And then we were going up a glacier. So you have to think you're wearing this harness that also is holding around your stomach. And this huge harness is putting a lot of pressure on your stomach, but still it worked. And we were pulling up the sledges and you get really warm. So you go from wearing three big thick jackets plus a wind jacket, like a shell basically, and you're wearing a fleece and you're wearing a base layer, to maybe just wearing the base layer or the fleece, and it's still minus 30 degrees. But the thing is, you're doing such an effort and you have to never sweat. You have to be really careful. What is really, really interesting is to see how much you can make a difference in terms of thermal management with just 2 or 3 centimeters. So for example, I was covering my face the whole time because I was really, really worried I would get frostbite on my nose or my cheeks or my lips or something like this. And the thing is, you can't see it. So you have to check other people. You have to see, are they getting white here? Are they getting white here? And tell them to cover up ASAP. But when there's lots of wind, you might get warm here because you're making an effort. But with the wind, you are unable to really feel if it's going to get cold or not. So I was really worried about that. So I was always wearing basically a balaclava, so I could make sure that I was covering my whole face. And that really helped. But sometimes I would get quite warm. So by just shifting it up by 2 centimeters, I would expose enough surface that I would cool down. And then as soon as there was a bit too much wind, I would put it back on. So I was basically getting changed all the time. Sometimes you remove just one glove and you still have the liner glove below it. And this is sufficient to basically remove some heat. It goes really, really quickly. It's completely different than when you're in a normal situation in the city. So to give you an example, you have to be extremely patient. When you are in Switzerland or in France or Italy or in the US, for example, and it's winter and it's -2, -3 degrees, if you're on the phone and you're making a phone call and you're not wearing gloves, after 5-10 minutes, your hands are going to start to feel really cold. And you can make two decisions. You can say, oh, I'm going to pull through the pain and keep calling, and then my hand is going to be a bit numb, but I'll go back in when I'm done. Or you stop your call and you get in. But there's no huge consequences unless you're really in the mountain and it's really cold. Like if you're in the city, this kind of behavior, it's fine. You just can push through and it's okay. You don't need to change your plans. But when it's minus 30 degrees or when it's minus 35 degrees, it's completely different. It's completely different, and you have to be patient and you have to listen to yourself. So for example, if you don't have the right dexterity, you're wearing your mittens and you need to open the zipper lock on your polka, or you need to do something that needs dexterity. So you need to change gloves. So you're going to remove your mitten, and during the few seconds or minutes where you don't have your mitten, your hand is going to start to freeze really quickly. So if you were in the city, you would just remove your mitten, open the ziplock, do what you have to do, and then put the mitten back up after. If you do that when it's minus 30 and you're a bit cold, for example, your hand starts freezing so bad that when you put the mitten back, you start crying in pain. So what you have to do is you have to remove the mitten, open the lock, put back the mitten, wait a little bit, warm up your hand, keep it moving, then remove it again, continue doing what you have to do, put it back, or put the right pair of gloves, hoping you have enough dexterity. But everything you do, you have to do it with increments. You have to make sure that you have precise movements, that you think, that you plan ahead, and you don't do any unnecessary things where you're going to be exposed to the cold. That day where I was sick on the second day, what worried me the most was not the cold, was not the fact that I didn't have strength and that I was letting down everyone. That worried me a lot, but what worried me most was the fact that I couldn't think properly. And it meant that I was going to make mistakes really quickly. And actually I did. I couldn't find my liner glass for some reason, probably because my head was completely away and I couldn't find where was what. And I was so cold, I didn't have the energy to go and get the other liner mittens. And it's your first day, so you're not yet really fully optimized. Although I had already optimized where my packaging, getting there still requested so much energy that I didn't have them on me. And I didn't realize that there was a buckle on my boots that had metal. And I touched bare metal with my index finger on the boots, and it was minus 36 degrees. And I felt the bite right away. Like I was like, ow! And suddenly I was thinking, I think I'm lucky. I'm probably just going to lose skin, which indeed happened. I did get basically a blister and lost the skin a few weeks later. But something worse could have happened. And specifically if I had been alone, this kind of behavior, this kind of pulling through when you're sick or when you're unwell, it doesn't work because you need your brain to be fully there. You need to be fully there to make sure you don't make anything dumb and that you can look after yourself, not just from physically your temperature or your food, etc., or your sleep, but that you don't do anything dumb and that you're really precise in your movement. So yeah, that was really quite interesting to see that you need to get your automatism to make your life easier. And then once you know where's what, then every evening you learn how to dry your sleeping bag, and you have to spend your whole time drying it. What Nalgene bottles are, which are basically those plastic bottles where you can put boiling water in and it keeps you warm. And basically I was sleeping with them. I was taking them with me. When I was doing my polar bear watch, I was putting them in my jacket. And I learned how to also ski down the slope, but you're not really skiing because obviously you have those ski touring skis with a skin below them, so they're not really sliding too much, but you can still slide slightly if you put your weight on the back of the ski. And what happens is that your sledge is still connected to you, so you pull it, and initially it has a bit of resistance, and then it takes off, has enough speed to keep sliding, and there's a tiny knot in front of the rope, so basically when it goes below the pole cart, stops it, so it doesn't go completely far off, or doesn't run too much into you. However, if the slope is slightly slanted, if you're not completely aligned with the direction of the climb, what happens is that your sledge will basically pull you. So you're just sliding down and then suddenly you just get whipped like a cartoon because the rope will just pull you on the side with the weight of the sledge. And you're not very stable on skis. Even if you were with your 2 feet on the ground, you would probably also couch off. So that was extremely funny. It could be dangerous too, but because it's snow, you fall on snow. So that was some of the amazing discoveries that you make. Obviously, there's lots of discoveries, again, as a team, learning what habits there are, what are some of the dumb things people do, how everybody reacts to things. That night, actually, we started having quite a bit of wind, and we had to learn how to build the tents when it was already windy. It wasn't as windy as I thought it would be, but still, it's starting to pick up. And you could see that you had to be more careful and what to be attentive to. And then the day after that, that's when we started getting a lot of wind, like really storm. And we had to be 6 people to build one tent. It's 2 people tent. We had to be 6 people, and you could see already how people would feel traumatized. Some would just frozen in space and be like, I'm cold, and you have to really just tell them, okay, now you just get it done. Okay, once you're in the tent, you're gonna be fine. But right now, the priority is to build your shelter. And what's really funny is that you can really relativize. You can think it's just wind. Yeah, of course you don't want to lose your shelter, but you still have all the tents, you still have your food. Nobody's frozen. And actually, funnily enough, in Svalbard when it's windy, the temperatures go up. So it was now minus 20 degrees or minus 22 degrees. So it was much warmer. So of course it's still cold, but the thing is you're still not in the same urgency. So you just have to think it's just wind. So that night, sadly, we didn't close perfectly one of the openings of the tent, and snow built up and basically put itself between the 2 compartments of the tent. And the snow just piled up, and in the middle of the night, the tent just did and it fell on top of us. And the reaction after a few days of you just walking around being tired, you just call the other one in the tent like, hey, you okay? Because you can't see them, there's snow in the middle, and you push the snow away, you go close up the tent, and you're fine. The problem is the tent got partially damaged because of this, so we really had to be careful. But then the next day, I was also sleeping quite well. Again, it was another night with lots of wind. We had to be careful. But this time, the snow was not accumulating in the tent. So I was quite happy about this, thinking it's going to be fine. I think I had the 5 a.m. shift for polar bears, so I was thinking, great, I'm going to get some sleep. I was sharing the tent with Nina that night. And what you have to understand is when you do a polar bear watch, what you have is you have a fence around the camp, and this fence basically gets triggered if an animal walks through. Okay, so basically it's 2 wires. It's quite terrifying. They tell you there's 2 wires, one up and one down, and the reason they have one down is so the polar bears can't crawl below the fence, and that's actually the most terrifying thought you can have. Thinking they can see it and they can crawl below it. Basically what it does, if this fence goes off, it basically has spark, and it just like explodes, so you can hear it. Then there's the person who's on polar bear watch that has gun with a flare, so a flare gun. It's got this red flare that would come up if you shoot it, so that people can see it and they can hear it even if they're in the tent. And the third barrier of protection is basically the guide. So you can either go and talk to the guides if you think there's a bear somewhere far away, or if they hear this, they come out right away with the rifles and they're ready to shoot the bear. Now your instructions is, if there's a bear, at least what we were taught, if there's a bear that comes in the tent, what you have to do is stay in your tent and you get dressed. Why? Because if there's a bear outside, for one thing, you probably won't be able to sprint it off, specifically if there's a fence around. And you will get caught. And there's bullets. So if the guys are up and they're going to start shooting at the bear to scare it off, or to injure it so it will not be able to attack you, you might get hit by a bullet. And specifically if there's a snowstorm, there's lots of wind. So you stay in the tent flat, you get dressed, you get ready, and once everybody's ready, then you try to grab everyone and you evacuate the camp. And you have your rifle and you stay and you just make sure that you can keep the bear away. So that night, tent as well, place, there's a snowstorm again, and around 2 or 3 a.m., I hear, and I'm thinking, oh, that's my tent. My tent probably just, collapsed again. And so I get out of my sleeping bag and I look up and I can't see anything. There's no snow, everything seems fine. And a few seconds later, I hear another, and this time I see a red light. And then okay, that's it. That's it, because you have to take the gun out and you have to shoot. So it's not, you cannot have a red flag by accident. That means someone shot the flare gun. There's a bear. So right away, I wake up my tent roommate and I'm like, Nina, bear. And she half grumpily tells me, it's just the wind. And indeed, over the wind, you could hear one of our guides, Stephen, and he was basically saying, hey guys, don't worry, go back to bed, it's just the wind. So basically the wind had triggered the fence, it had blown up, and because between 11 and 3 a.m. we didn't have any light, so we couldn't see. Even if you were wearing your headlamp, you wouldn't be able to see much. You wouldn't be able to see bears, or you would see them probably at the last minute. It's actually really terrifying. And the most terrifying thing is that the toilet is really close to the fence. So if you're using the loo around 2 or 3 a.m. and your trousers are down your ankles, and you really, really wish that the bear's not going to attack there, because not only are you going to suffer a horrible death, but it would be a humiliating one at the same time. And it's scary. It's really that shift is one of the worst shifts you can do, because you can't see much, but you have to be there in case, you're a line of defense. So what happened is the person that was on duty watch heard the fence go off, couldn't see the bear, and in case it was his eyesight not working and not just the fence, he shot the flare gun, which is correct. It's the right thing to do. You better safe than sorry. And when the guides came out, they realized there's no bear, everything's safe, and it just put the fence back together, etc. Now, in the morning, we had a debrief about this, and what we learned is that in the middle of the night when this happened, his tent roommate, Dan, he panicked. He was like, oh my God, my friend is in danger. I need to go save him. And he basically grabbed a snow shovel and went to help his friend. And we're like, just never do that. It's lovely and it's epic and heroic. Never do that. But at the same time, the image that we had of him trying to save his friend was just fantastic. Yeah, and then the next day, one thing that was fantastic was so all those different panoramas and images, and you next to reindeers and really close, and it's very different from the ones that you might see in Scandinavia, for example. They really look like they're coming from children's book. And you have those beautiful places, like you walk on a frozen river, and it's actually quite funny because you almost stumble every 2 seconds. And I got to open one of the walks, so it means you are in front, and a few of us got to be in front for a couple of hours or minutes. And it was great because you have no one in front of you. Normally you're following the polka in front of you. Sometimes you just look down all the time to protect your face from the wind. But when you're in front, you have to face the wind. And normally it's usually the guys, and you have to think. You're not just walking, you have to think, where do I have to go to? So there's less bumps, there's less weight to drag, because obviously when you have to go over bumps, you sometimes have to put maximum force to just drag the sledge along. So you try to find the most even path. Maybe it adds a couple of 100 meters, but it's actually better than always going maximum force, because this is where you're going to really tire the body. So it makes it much more of an intellectual challenge that normally you're just following, and it's more mental and physical challenge. But when you have to do this thing, this planning, and you have to look out for polar bears, and you have to check the pace behind you, it becomes very, very interesting. So we walked on a frozen river, we went further, had lunch with lots of wind. We set camp when there was sunset, just some fantastic moments. And then we learned that we wouldn't be able to be picked up from the new location where we were going to finish our trek, because there was a risk of avalanche. Now you have to understand that in some countries where we have ski resorts like Switzerland, if you have a risk of avalanche that's really dangerous, you will literally put explosive and blow them up. So you will do a controlled avalanche to make sure that no one is present when it happens, and yeah, control it and control the amount of snow that's going to slide off. But in locations like Svalbard, where there's barely anyone, there's no need. You shouldn't be there. There's no reason for you to be there unless you're an idiot like me who wants to go and do expeditions. So what happened is that they told us we are not able to come with the truck, if you can call it a truck. We're not able to come and pick you up there. It's too dangerous because it's not going quickly. It's a danger for us to go there. So for 2 days, we actually had no idea how we would get back home, if we would get back home, if we'd get our flights back. And it was very interesting because people would say, but I actually want to go shopping. I want to buy this. I have my flight this time. I have to get back to work. I have some exams, and it's like, yeah, but, Mother Nature doesn't give a damn about what you have to do. It's going to happen. It's not going to happen. Do you have no control over this? And this is more important. This is your life. And all the rest, exams and flights, etc., it's not your problem. And what's interesting is our phones were not working. Obviously, there's absolutely no network. There's almost no human installations there. So our guides were using their satellite phones to contact their boss, actually. So one of the guides' fathers, so Marty Phillips' dad was Eric Phillips, who actually was preparing for the SpaceX flight. So quite kind of cool. And she was calling him and like, okay, can you help us? We need to find some people. Maybe they can come pick us up with snowmobiles. Evaluate what's dangerous, where to go through. So it was quite stressful for them. It was a lot of work for them because they still have to manage us, the 12 kids who need to go to the loo and eat and not be cold, etc. Manage the polar bears, and sometimes they were carrying double the weight. It was insane. They were absolute beasts. And now they had this logistics to manage. And obviously you don't want anyone to be too sad. And it was quite interesting because we had food for the morning of the last day, but then we were running out of food. Like it was not planned to have extra rations. So we shared the food that we had between us. Water, you can get as much as you want because obviously there's snow and we have salt and pepper to make sure that you don't have fully deionized water. But yeah, you're running out of food. And some people are not used to not having food. Some didn't like the food, so they were already underfed for quite some while. And you're thinking, and the guys, they were like pragmatic, like if we have to be there 2 or 3 days, we have to be there 2 or 3 days. If we have to be longer, they can probably airdrop some food, but just prepare to being comfortable and prepare to be in the unknown. And we thought they would come pick us up at 10, and then was going to pick us up at 1 or 2. So at midday, we were ready at the location and we packed all the gear, we were ready. Everybody was in good mood. And then 2 went by, then they told us, okay, they're coming at 4:30. And 4:30 went by, and yeah, still nothing. So starting sharing hot water we still had from our thermoses and chocolate, and 6 comes by, I think 6:15, and that's when we saw the first motorbike. So they managed to put 3 motorbikes, and they managed to pick us, some of us, extract us away from the area of avalanche, drop us in the middle of nowhere, about 10 kilometers away from the city, and they went back to pick the others. And we didn't know if they would be able to pick everyone at once or some of the pool cars or some of the equipment. We just didn't know. But the ride on the snowmobile was amazing. It was something I never expected. And then we were dropped in the middle of nowhere with Mardi, and she was holding a pool car and her rifle to make sure we were not getting attacked by polar bears or we could defend ourselves. And we walked for like 2 hours and a half while the sun was setting, just in direction of the city. And then we managed to be picked up the last bit and get back and finish packing everything around midnight. So that was an incredible adventure. Obviously, there's so much more to it, so many things from the experiments that we had, from the people that we talked to, from what was filmed, from what was taken in images. So many funny moments, difficult moments from, for example, I didn't realize that I had partially sprained all my toes. So I couldn't feel my feet so much. I could move them, so I know they were not frozen, they were not frostbitten. But a few days after coming back to Switzerland, after going back home, I started feeling my feet progressively again, and huge pain arrived. And that's when I realized when I was putting my ski boots and forcing my feet into them, I was actually spraining my toe over and over again. And it's funny because you don't realize. I also froze completely the inside of my thighs. So I lost lots of skin there. My skin was actually really painful. I had bruises everywhere, and what we call polypi, basically because you have fat in those regions, you don't have a lot of sensitivity, so you don't really feel the cold as much as you would have, for example, on your hands, etc. And you can freeze much quicker there. So I heard about it. I could feel sometimes the cold being a bit painful, but I never realized it was actually that bad. And I only realized when I got back home and I finally got undressed for the first time and I saw my thighs and I was like, oh my God. That was very interesting because there was only 9 days. So you have to be really careful, you have to be methodical, you have to be prepared. And it's a physical and mental challenge, but it's one of the most beautiful things you can do in terms of discovering a new place, discovering yourself, working with others, and just being patient. So if you ever wanted an expedition, I definitely recommend this. This is a great place, and I'm really grateful to Gael who organized this, and Ice Trek that was basically helping us on this expedition with their guides and all the equipment. Have a great day.